The rain poured heavily that night when Clara stood at the edge of her family's porch, clutching a small bundle of clothes against her chest. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her heart heavy with betrayal. She had lost her husband only 6 months ago, yet instead of comfort, her family had given her condemnation. "You've brought shame to our name," her brother had spat. They accused her of being cursed, unlucky, and too much of a burden. And now, as punishment, they were sending her far away, to live and work for a cowboy in the barren lands of Montana. The world she knew was gone, replaced by cold whispers and a destiny she never asked for. The horse-drawn wagon creaked along the muddy path, carrying her through endless fields of silence. Clara clung to her shawl, shivering not just from the cold but from fear of the unknown. She had never been beyond her small town, never met this so-called cowboy who was now her master. The villagers said he was rough, a man who preferred horses to people. Rumors claimed he lived alone after his family perished in a fire. She wondered if he'd treat her kindly, or if she was merely another punishment waiting to happen. When the wagon stopped before a weathered wooden ranch, Clara's heart sank. The man who stood at the gate looked every bit the legend, tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing eyes shadowed beneath a worn hat. His name was Samuel Hayes, a cowboy whose silence spoke louder than words. He didn't offer a greeting, only nodded and turned toward the barn. "You'll stay in the small cabin by the well," he said curtly. "Work starts at dawn." His tone carried no cruelty, yet no warmth either. Clara simply nodded, feeling smaller than she ever had. The days that followed tested every ounce of her strength. She rose before sunrise, feeding the animals, hauling water, and tending the garden until her hands blistered. Samuel hardly spoke, only observing her quietly from afar. At first, she feared his silence meant disapproval. But she began to notice something different in his gaze, an understanding, a quiet empathy she couldn't explain. He never shouted, never struck her, unlike the men from her family who believed fear was discipline. His presence was steady, like the earth itself. One morning, as the sky painted itself gold, Clara struggled to lift a heavy bucket from the well. Her arms trembled, and the rope burned her palms. Before she could lose her grip, a strong hand caught the handle. Samuel stood beside her, his touch firm but gentle. "You don't have to do everything alone," he said softly. It was the first time she'd heard kindness in his voice, and it broke something inside her, something that had been locked away since her husband's death. She blinked back tears, whispering, "I don't know how to need anyone anymore." From that day forward, the silence between them changed. Samuel began teaching her small things, how to ride a horse, how to mend fences, how to read the weather by the way the wind moved through the grass. He never treated her like a servant but like an equal. In return, Clara cooked warm meals and brought laughter back to the lonely ranch. Slowly, they began to share their stories. Samuel told her about the fire that took his parents and sister, how guilt kept him isolated from the world. Clara told him about her late husband, how love had died too soon, and how cruelty had driven her from home. One evening, while they sat near the fire, Samuel handed her a small carved wooden horse. "I made this when I thought I'd never feel joy again," he said quietly. "But now, I think I was just waiting for someone who'd understand the silence." Clara's eyes filled with tears as she ran her fingers over the smooth surface. She had been sent here as punishment, but in that moment, she realized she had found something her family never gave her: peace. As months passed, the ranch began to thrive again. Flowers grew where weeds once choked the soil. The animals seemed livelier, and laughter echoed through the fields. Neighbors who had once avoided Samuel now visited again, drawn by the warmth that radiated from his home. And every night, as the stars shimmered above, Clara and Samuel sat side by side, two souls who had found healing in each other's company. But peace was never without challenge. One afternoon, a letter arrived from Clara's brother, ordering her to return home. "Your punishment is over," it read coldly. "You've repented enough." Clara stared at the paper, torn between fear and newfound courage. For the first time, she didn't feel small. She looked at Samuel, who simply said, "You're free to go if that's what you want." But she could see the pain hidden behind his calm eyes. That night, Clara stood under the open sky, the letter trembling in her hands. "All my life, I've been told where I belong," she whispered. "But for once, I want to choose." The decision was heavy, but her heart knew the answer. She threw the letter into the fire and watched it burn into ash. Samuel didn't speak, but when their eyes met, he understood. In that quiet exchange, something beautiful bloomed, unspoken love. Days turned into weeks, and life settled into a rhythm of quiet joy. They worked side by side, their bond deepening with every sunrise. Samuel began to smile more, a rare, boyish grin that melted away years of solitude. Clara, too, transformed from a woman burdened by sorrow into one filled with light. Together, they built a life not defined by past pain, but by resilience and choice. One day, a sudden storm swept across the plains. The wind howled, lightning cracked, and the barn roof began to give way. Without hesitation, Samuel ran into the storm to save the horses trapped inside. Clara screamed for him to come back, but his voice was lost in the wind. Hours later, when the storm cleared, she found him injured but alive, clutching a foal in his arms. "Couldn't let them die," he whispered weakly. Clara wept as she held him close, realizing how deeply she loved this man who had risked everything for life. His recovery was slow but steady. Clara never left his side, tending to his wounds, reading to him by candlelight, and holding his hand through the nights. When he finally stood again, the first thing he did was walk out to the field and kneel before her. "You were sent here as punishment," he said softly, "but you became my greatest treasure." His voice broke as he added, "Marry me, Clara. Not because of duty, but because we chose each other." Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, unable to speak. The two were married under the open sky, with the ranch animals as their witnesses and the wind whispering blessings around them. There were no grand dresses or golden rings, only love, the kind born from pain, kindness, and second chances. From that day on, their ranch became known as Haven Hill, a place where lost souls could find peace. Years later, Clara often sat by the same well where she once struggled with heavy buckets. Children played in the fields, their laughter carrying across the land. Samuel would ride by, waving with that same smile she had come to love. Every now and then, she'd think of her family, the ones who had cast her away, and feel no anger, only gratitude. If not for their cruelty, she might never have found her true home. As the sun set over the golden horizon, Samuel joined her by the well, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "Do you ever wish things had been different?" he asked softly. Clara smiled, her eyes reflecting the warm light. "No," she whispered. "Because every wrong turn led me right here, to you." Their love became the talk of nearby towns, a story passed down through generations about the widow who was punished but found her purpose in the heart of a cowboy. And as time went on, the ranch remained alive with the same spirit of compassion that had brought them together. When they grew old, they still watched every sunrise hand in hand. Even when words failed them, their silence spoke volumes, two souls who had weathered life's storms and turned them into something beautiful. In the end, it wasn't punishment that defined Clara's story, it was love, forgiveness, and the courage to rise again when the world tried to break her. And so, the widow who was sent away became not a burden, but a beacon, a reminder that sometimes, the greatest treasures are found where we least expect them.